Hello, I'm Joe Ty, CEO of Values Coach. You've probably heard the old saying, culture eats strategy for lunch. And it's so true. You know, Enron had a brilliant strategy and a fatally flawed corporate culture, and that's what brought them down. And in the book I wrote, All Hands on Deck, I studied the lives and the work of 10 legendary business leaders. People like Walt Disney, Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard, Mary Kay Ash, Ray Kroc, and the companies that they built. And one thing stands true in every one of those companies, one of the keys to their long-standing success, and that is that they each had what I call cultural toughness. And whether you're the CEO of a Fortune 100 company, a department head in a hospital, even as a parent, the lessons you can learn from those great leaders can help you build a stronger culture, a culture of toughness. And let's look at 7 specific things that you can do to create a stronger culture of toughness in your organization or you're part of the organization. Number 1, begin with a foundation of values. One of the most daunting crises ever to hit a corporation was the Tylenol poisoning that Johnson & Johnson had to go through back in the early 1980s. It is today considered the case on how to handle a crisis properly. Any business school ethics class is going to study that case. And why did they do so well? They were very, very clear about what their values were as spelled out in the J&J Credo, and they acted upon those values. In fact, if you go to the Johnson & Johnson website today, they talk about their credo, and they say it is more than just a moral compass, although it is that. It is a great way to achieve business success. So get clear about what your values are. What do you stand for? What won't you stand for? How are your values reflected in the behaviors that I would witness on the part of your people? Number 2, articulate a mission that inspires people. You know, so many mission statements are boring, they're bland, they're just not authentic. Take, for example, on the other hand, Zappos. You know, Zappos, they're selling shoes online. But what does the CEO, Tony Hsieh, talk about in his book? Delivering happiness. What they've done is they've taken selling shoes, you know, a mundane business, and they've created something that really inspires people. And they share stories about how selling shoes online and the other stuff they sell online, people buy into that. It becomes for them a personal mission. And you need to do the same thing with your organization or you're part of the organization. Articulate a mission, a purpose that inspires people. You know, creating wealth for the shareholders ain't going to do it. It's got to be something. Zig Ziglar says we all listen to the same radio station. WIIFM, what's in it for me? You have to show them something that's in it for them. How do you inspire me to want to take ownership for my work? Number 3 relates to that, and that is be authentic. Again, so many mission statements feel like they were written by a consultant. One of my favorite examples of authenticity in action, there was an industrial ventilation systems company in Lexington, Kentucky with the highly inspiring name of HVLS Systems, Inc. High volume, low speed systems. They make those great big fans you see in factories and warehouses. And the marketing guy kept going to the CEO and saying, "Boss, this is really boring. Let's change the name of the company. Let's be authentic. Let's call our company what our customers already call our products." And to their credit, they did. They changed the name of the company from boring, HVLS Systems, Inc., to what all their customers call them anyway, Big Ass Fans. And that's true. They have a website, bigassfans.com. They didn't just change the name, though. They changed the whole culture of the company. They hired Walter Perry, the refrigerator, the big running back from the Chicago Bears, to be their spokesass. They've adopted a herd of orphan donkeys that they now support. They've created a whole new culture in the company. And you know what? Their sales have been doubling about every year ever since. The 4th thing you need to do, you need to eradicate the words, "not my job," and replace them with "whatever it takes." Back in the early 1980s, the Mazda car company got in a serious financial jam. And rather than laying a bunch of people off, what they did is they went to factory workers on the floor. They gave them a briefcase full of brochures and they sent them door to door selling cars. Guess what? At the end of the year when they had their awards for the top salespeople, the top 10 salespeople were factory workers who had been selling cars door to door. That's the kind of Whatever it takes, cultural toughness attitude that you need to have in your company. Number 5, in a culture of toughness, cultural toughness, you do not tolerate toxic emotional negativity. You know, bitching, moaning, whining, the other BMW club, gossiping, because that will drag down an organization. It will muddy a culture, and it will interfere with your ability to get your job done. One of the things that we do with our clients at Values Coach, we call it the pickle challenge. You know, it's named after people who look like they were born with a dill pickle stuck in their mouth. They walk around like, and they're always complaining and nothing's ever right. And what we do is we have our spark plugs, that's what we call our participants, start finding each other. And anytime somebody bitches, moans, or whines, it costs them $0.25, you put it in a jar and you donate the money for a charity. I heard a story about one guy. He came in one day and he said, I know it's going to be a shitty day. Here's $1. I'm paying in advance. And he dropped $1 in the bucket. Guess what? He ended up having a great day. Why? Instead of everybody tiptoeing around, oh, Bob's having a bad day today, they laughed about it, they joked about it, and they got back to doing their work. Number 6, practice courage. Courage is a skill. It is not something you're born with. Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. And it's not only at a personal level, at a corporate level, you need to practice courage. Greatest example of that, probably in the history of the world, is right after the terrible attack of 9/11. The airline industry, when it had a collective panic attack. And United Airlines and Boeing and all of the other major players in the airline industry almost overnight laid off more than 100,000 people and sent their companies and our economy into a tailspin because of their lack of courage. The only exception, Southwest Airlines. And the CEO at Southwest Airlines sent a letter out to all his employees and said, this has been a terrible tragedy, but you know what? We are going to do whatever it takes to survive as a company. And we're not going to lay people off. And they didn't. And the only airline that continued to grow, the only one that didn't go through bankruptcy, was United Airlines. Why? Because they practiced courage. And that gets me to the 7th thing that you do in a culture of toughness. And that is that you create almost impossible expectations of people, and then you hold them to it. There's a hospital in Indiana, Columbus Regional Hospital, that has one of the most amazing vision statements I've ever heard. And I got to visit them. I was on a panel to select the top leadership team for Health Leaders Media. And I did the site visit at Columbus Regional Hospital. Their vision statement says, we will be the best in the world at everything we do. And CEO Jim Bickle emphasizes that doesn't mean we're going to do everything, but if we choose to do something, we're going to be the best in the world at it. So when we make chocolate chip cookies, we compare them to Mrs. Fields. We find out who's the best in the world, and that's what we want to be. So when back in 2008, a flash flood flooded the basement and the first floor of that hospital, the engineers came in and they studied the place, and they said, it's going to take you 18 months to get this hospital back up and running again. And Jim said, no, we're going to be the best in the world at getting a flooded hospital back into service. And 5 months later, they were back up and running. And guess what? During that 5 months, they hardly lost any employees. They kept everybody on the payroll. They were able to keep the community going and to serve the community. That is creating impossible expectations. Now, when you have this culture of ownership, when you have cultural toughness, 2 great things happen. One, it is really the only sustainable source of competitive advantage in a tough marketplace. Your competitors can copy what you do. They can steal your best people. They cannot take your culture. And the second thing is, if you want to have your organization be a great place to work, the only thing that is going to attract and retain great people is your culture. And that means having a culture of ownership and having cultural toughness. And the bottom line benefit across the board is pride. People who work in an organization that has a culture of ownership, who have cultural toughness, they're going to be proud to be part of who they are. And that's the ultimate payback. And that is a benefit to the company. It's a benefit to your customers, your patients if you're a hospital. And guess what? It's a benefit to the kids at home. When their parents come home proud of who they are and what they do, everybody wins.